stream now.
Thank you. Over to yourself, Councillor Holditch.
Thank you. Firstly, I want to thank all of you for agreeing to take part in this summit for Peterborough today. I need to remind you that this summit will be live streamed as well as being recorded for people to watch afterwards, and local media are not only watching, but I'm pleased to say there are some of them taking part. Please could I remind you to keep yourselves muted until you want to speak, and could you all make sure that you're muted now? And when you do want to speak, please could you raise your little blue hand, which you will find in the place where the participants are at the bottom. Peterborough is now at a crucial point in controlling the virus. We moved from being an area 6th highest infected in the rate in the country under the Cabinet Office spotlight, who came to see how we were looking and working together with all of you and the residents to bring down the rate. Thanks to the efforts of you all and all the residents and staff, I really do want to thank you all for the tremendous work this rate has fallen. We're no longer on the government's watch list, but we're not complacent about this, as you may have read in the local media this week. So it's vital that we don't throw that away and we achieve what we've achieved so far. We don't want to see the rises, and we don't want to see tighter restrictions, and we certainly don't want to see any more people getting ill or indeed dying in the city. We can see the increase. We can see the increase in the virus infections nationally, and impact on already having on other cities similar to our own. But we know that many local residents are growing tired because of the length of the time the virus has been with us. So we need to communicate with communities to keep up the pressure. This is our opportunity to discuss how we can unite and work together and re-energise and revigorate our efforts to keep our communities safe, our businesses open, and put our economy back on a firm footing. We all represent different communities, services and areas of the city, and with this summit it's allowed us to all share ideas about action that we need to take in the future. There will be a couple of speakers and then we will have 30 minutes for question times and ideas. And when we get to the question times, if you could please raise your blue hand at the bottom, or indeed wave at me, because we do have some of you on screen, and we will try and fit you all in. But before this, I'd like to ask Emmeline Watkins, our Deputy Director of Public Health for Peterborough, to give us a quick overview of the most up-to-date picture we have of the infection rates and their causes in this city. So, Emmeline, could I ask you to take this forward, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Holditch. Let me try and share my screen. So, there we go. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Can I just confirm that that's come across? Brilliant.
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, to give you a brief update on the situation in Peterborough. Currently, Peterborough isn't seeing the same rise of COVID-19 cases as some of the other areas in England. And what we're really seeing is a relatively stable incidence rate of COVID-19 really for the last few months. This has been, as Councillor Holditch mentioned, this has been a real change. So in May and June, Peterborough was a local authority with one of the highest weekly incidence rates, and its ranking has dropped considerably since about mid-July, with our incidence rate remaining relatively stable and other areas changing. What we do know, and you'll have seen in the news, there is huge regional variation in the incidence rates of COVID-19. So you've got very high incidences in the northeast and the northwest of England at the moment, whereas in Peterborough, the rate today was of this extractive data that we've been using was 26 per 100,000. I will say that the map on this this slide actually shows us from 2 days ago when we were at 24, so just in a slightly lighter colour than we would be today. What I will point out is when you look at these areas and you see those really high areas of incidence in the north, Peterborough is geographically close to some of those areas which have higher incidence and have increasing incidence. And it is really important that we keep this pressure up, we keep the prevention messages in Peterborough and remain at the rates that we are currently. And on this next slide, I just want to go through some of the work that has happened and some of the impact that we have had in preventing transmission of COVID-19 in Peterborough. And we've been able to very strong, targeted, localized and adaptive approach to what we've been doing in Peterborough. And there's been a huge amount of work with the community, with all the community leaders, and that has really paid off. So just giving some of the examples of the approach since July. Obviously, there was the reduction of lockdown at the beginning of July, and there was a huge amount of work to make sure that Peterborough was safe and COVID secure over several weeks, but especially in the week running up to that. However, Peterborough did become an area of concern in that mid-July period, and because of the additional local data that we've been able to have access to, we've been able to take a really localized approach, knowing where the geographies where we have higher incidence, the higher risk groups, the higher risk settings. This also then enabled us to deploy testing in the right places to make sure our communities got appropriate access, and also to engage with a variety of communities to make sure the messaging around prevention of COVID-19 and prevention of transmission came through. So looking at events, working with community leaders over Eid, commissioning work with a variety of communities, targeted messaging to where we knew we had risk factors. Enhanced contact tracing started in early August. We've had days of action where we know we've had localized issues, made sure there's support in place, been able to target testing because we have this more localized information, and worked with a variety of communities to make sure that the messages are getting through and we prevent the transmission of COVID-19 in Peterborough. And the work is ongoing. Like many other areas, there's been work on access to testing throughout September, and then obviously work with communities given the change of guidelines on the 14th. And Adrian will be going into this work in much more detail. But I think what I wanted to show on this slide was actually just the sheer quantity of effort that the community in Peterborough has put in place, and that effort has paid off. We have not seen that increase. Other areas similar to us have seen that rise in cases, and we are keeping relatively stable, and the importance of keeping that going forward. So to hand back to you, Councillor Holditch.
Right, Councillor Joseph, I can see you've got your hand up. We're taking the questions at the end. I'll make sure you're the first in it. So could I now turn to Adrian Chapman, please, the Director of Communities and Partnerships, who will give us an overview of the community's response work that we've all been part of. He will also read a presentation from Dr. Jaspal Singh, the Chair of Peterborough Interfaith Council and Deputy Lord Lieutenant. Adrian Chapman, please.
John, thank you very much, and good afternoon, colleagues. I have to say it's great to see so many colleagues and friends on the call today. This is typical Peterborough for me, where we've pulled together over the last 6 to 8 months. You've been right along with us on this pretty awful journey. And today for me is about making sure we stick together as we face the next few months, because we certainly have a continued fight on our hands. So really fantastic to see everyone. Yeah, as John describes, I'd quite like just to spend a bit of time talking about the role that the community in particular have played so far in this fight, and also set out some of the work we've been doing as a council and with our partners, and importantly, some work that you will start to see in parts of Peterborough from as early as next week. The first thing I'd like to say really is to place on record a huge formal thank you to our community leaders of all kinds, many of whom are on the call today, many of whom can't be here. But I am very sure, and I know many of my colleagues are, that we would be in a far worse position had it not been for the way that our community leaders have stepped up and come alongside us and really helped to drive messages home across our very diverse communities. I think we were probably one of, if not the first area in the country to produce translated materials. We were way ahead of government on that front, and many other councils have now followed. And a lot of the materials that we translated were complex public health messages that even people who speak English as a first language sometimes have struggled with. And our community leaders have stepped in, have translated that material in more than 20 different languages, and that material is now being used widely across the UK. And actually, many of the people that have spent time doing that work for us have stayed with us and have now formed a community champions network. We meet regularly. I can see on my screen many of the faces that come along to those meetings, and they continue to drive home messages amongst their own communities, their friends, their neighbours, but in ways that perhaps we in the council can't or would struggle with. They have made those messages land, and as I say, I know that that's made a huge difference. We would be, I'm quite sure, in a far worse position. I also want to just pay tribute to our faith partners, all of whom have also been with us on this journey, and I know in all cases have delivered some very strong and robust messages to their congregations without exception. And that's been really important for us, particularly as an example, the work we've been doing with our mosque leaders under the leadership of Mr. Chowdhury, who I think is on the call today, and the amazing work that he and the other mosques have done to reach some of the more vulnerable residents, those that are more susceptible to harm caused by the pandemic, and Muslim community Friday prayers. In the case of Mr. Chowdhury's own mosque, able to reach several thousand on a Friday, and I know the other mosques have followed suit. So I would like to just thank Mr. Chowdhury for that, but also all of our other faith leaders, without exception, as I say, have stepped up. It's not always been easy. Again, sometimes the community have wanted to celebrate in a traditional way in big events, and actually we've had to work with those communities and those community leaders to say, actually, that might not be right for the city. And I have to say, the community have completely understood our rationale, and in more than one occasion, event arrangements have been changed and sometimes cancelled, sometimes reduced, but certainly mitigations put in place to keep our population safe. And I just finally want to say a couple of thank yous to a couple of voluntary sector organisations that have been working really hard on our behalf to reach target audiences. So Parker, who are an incredible organisation based out in the central part of the city, have spent 6 weeks working with us to make contact with agency workers with an EU nationality, those people that we know have become more vulnerable to the pandemic because of the way they travel to and from work. Parker have been able to reach many of those agency workers and help spread really strong and robust messages about social distancing, wearing a face covering, and not car sharing in volume and so on. Incredible work that, again, we would not have been able to achieve on our own. And Gladka, another great organisation in our city, have spent a similar amount of time, actually 6 weeks, reaching out to largely Asian women, but also other women, as the men amongst us will probably appreciate this, as in their capacity as head of household, to ensure that the whole household understands the issues associated with the pandemic. We are a city that is seeing some significant household transmission. So incredible work by our voluntary sector organisation. As a public sector, just to update and bring to life some of what Emmeline described, several weeks ago now, we stood up what we're calling a rapid response team, led by one of our assistant directors here in the council, Rob Hill, who's on the call today, but supported by colleagues from across the organisation, as well as police colleagues, health colleagues, and public health colleagues. And that rapid response team has been able to almost immediately, and certainly within a few hours, stand up reactive arrangements that have helped to mitigate the spread of the pandemic where we've seen local issues or local spikes. And that's been an incredible effort and is something that we are planning to continue with for some considerable time. As Emmeline says, we've held a number of days of action as well, and that again brought together community safety staff, regulatory services staff, so trading standards, environmental health, food safety and licensing staff, police colleagues, and those days of action, particularly targeting central parts of Peterborough, where we know that the spread of the virus has been at its most prolific, has reached out to both businesses and also to residents and visitors to those areas to ensure compliance. And Emmeline did mention the test and trace pilot work that Peterborough is delivering. I'm really pleased to say actually that the current success rate for that test and trace pilot sits at above 90%. So when I last checked, about 92% of contacts that were unsuccessfully contacted by the national team successfully contacted by the Peterborough team. It's a huge effort, but actually that's a really important part of keeping our city safe, to ensure that people who have been in contact with somebody that's received a positive test result are advised to self-isolate. So I promised just to update you on what you might start to see happening from next week, and this will be a significant change, again in probably initially in central parts of the city, where we are going to bring together all of this effort into a formal operation. There's been some incredible work happening, and I hope I've given you a flavour of that, and we think there's more we can do by pulling this together under shared leadership and really focusing on 4 key themes of activity. First of all, business engagement. We know that there's lots of comment about some business practice and lack of compliance with the rules. So the first theme of the operation will be focusing businesses. The second will be a continued effort on changing public behaviour and the way that people abide by the conditions and the rules that we must all follow. Thirdly, a more general targeted communications campaign. So making sure our communities, wherever they're from, whatever their background, understand the latest guidance. And finally, supporting testing and ensuring that anybody that needs a test can get a test as locally as possible. And if that test is positive, or if somebody is subsequently contact traced, there is absolutely no excuse in Peterborough for a person not to self-isolate. And I'll just very quickly, John, if I may, just to finish, give you some examples of what you might start to see. So there will be lots of business engagement, yes, lots of targeted visit, lots of days of action from trading standards, environmental health colleagues, licensing colleagues and community safety staff. But that now will be coupled with high profile patrols in parts of Peterborough, very visible patrols of council, and I'm really pleased to say police staff. A huge thanks to the constabulary locally who have really stepped up along with us to ensure there's a high profile presence, and Andy may want to say something about that. A real commitment today to 4 hours of police activity a day on average to support efforts to combat the pandemic. And that high-profile enforcement activity will also include more parking and housing enforcement activity. You might think, well, why is parking enforcement important? But actually, if people park badly and in a condensed space, it leads to crowds of people gathering. It leads to a general sense of unrest and disorganisation. So actually a whole range of enforcement activity, not least of all from staff who are all wearing high-vis jackets, gives a sense of assurance and reassurance. All of these staff will be trained to marshal the public, to give advice to the public and to look out for any breaking of the rules so that we can ensure there is enforcement that follows. And we'll continue the work with transport providers. It's really important that people who need to get to work but can only do so via agency buses or by public transport do so safely in the full knowledge of the risks. And we are reaching out to those people and also the transport companies to make sure that they know the rules. And we are hopeful that there'll be a dedicated test centre provided in central Peterborough in the not too distant future. Our role as part of this operation will be to help anybody that needs a test to navigate the process of booking that test. We know it's difficult for some people, especially if you don't speak English as a first language. And we've set up a hotline here in the support hub to enable us to book a test for people that can't speak English as a first language, or perhaps don't have good reading and writing skills, or simply don't have good digital skills. And we will have translators available to book those tests for people. And then finally, from me, I promise, just some final work we're doing on a package to support people to self-isolate. We're really lucky to have the national scheme, which will enable people on certain benefits to have a £500 payment, which might just enable people to stay at home safely. But there'll be other people that won't be benefiting from that scheme for various reasons. We will fill in the gaps. We want there to be no excuse for anybody in this city not to self-isolate. It isn't just about money. Some people might need help with shopping, also walking their pets, practical things like that. We have set up an operation here, as we've done throughout the pandemic, to provide that kind of support to residents in need. And we'll make sure that you all know as community leaders how people can access that support. I suppose my message is there has been some great work. You will see a change next week, see change, things will ramp up in a good way for our city. But the plea from me is to please stay with us and continue this fight. And I know that between us we will get there. John, thank you.
Adrian, you've got a statement to read.
Thank you very much, I have. So Jaspal Singh, Dr. Jaspal Singh, who can't be with us today, many of you will know is the chairman of the Peterborough Interfaith Council. He's also the Deputy Lieutenant of Cambridgeshire and has provided the following statement. Coronavirus has not gone away and recent figures are disturbing. The people of Peterborough should be thanked for their support and resilience in the pandemic, and we need this to continue for the safety of the people of Peterborough. If I may say that the faith communities have played their part in limiting worship in places of worship, using face masks, hand sanitation and social distancing. All of these should be ramped up in the current spike. May I suggest action should be locally orientated and focus more on the activities of the 18 to 30-year-olds, as well as community and household spread. I'm sure the faith groups will continue to support any strategy and actions taken to combat COVID. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian. Now, for the next 30 minutes or so, I'd like to open the summit out to your ideas. Please raise your hands and I will call upon you to speak. When you speak, would you please introduce yourself and your organisation who you represent? And then at the end of the meeting, I will call on Dr. Liz Robin to summarise these points and because she's going to develop a plan for the next 6 months. So the first person I'm calling on is Councillor Joseph. Councillor Joseph, please.
Thank you, Councillor Joseph for Park Ward. Thank you for both Adrian and Emmeline for your presentations. I've just got a couple of questions. Obviously, there was a report in the Telegraph from Dr. Robins about how the numbers that were being reported were not necessarily accurate due to the large number of people that are unable to get a test at present. How much do you think that impacts on the numbers in Peterborough? And do you have any numbers for the people that have took up the test and trace in Peterborough?
Somebody going to answer it.
Thank you.
Liz. Thanks, Liz.
Okay. Liz?
Happy to answer. Yes, you're absolutely right. One of the things that we found was that when the pressure on the national testing system went up, it did become harder to get a test. And one of the reasons for that was that whereas we had walk-ins into the mobile testing units that were coming into central Peterborough that many people were able to use, there was a national decision that those walk-ins would need to stop. And part of the reason for that was because with the difficulty getting tests, walk-ins were getting lots of external people coming in and trying to get a test there. So that could become quite difficult for communities. So that was a national decision. And we did see after that we had a very sudden fall in some of our positive case rates, and we thought that was because people who had been accessing testing were finding it more difficult. So absolutely, yes, you're right about that, and that's why Adrian talked about putting in place support for people to access a test, to make sure that communities and people who are finding it difficult, we are able to help to do that. We're colleagues like Dr. Moder are helping with that as well. The good news is that we have information. We applied to open what's called a local testing centre, which is not a mobile testing unit. It's a unit that's there all the time in a local area, and we believe that we have got agreement to that from the national and regional systems, so that we're looking to have a reopening to walk-ins around mid-October in central Peterborough. So that should help a great deal. Does that cover your question, Councillor Joseph?
Yeah,
The other one was just around, have you got the numbers for the amount of people who've taken up the Test and Trace app in Peterborough?
I don't think we've got the numbers for taking up the app. I'm looking to Emmeline because she sits on our surveillance cell, and if there's a number available, Emmeline will have it, but I don't think we've been given those numbers.
Not at this point in time, no, we haven't received that data.
Okay. Councillor Nick Sanford.
Yes, I'm Councillor Nick Sanford. I'm leader of the Liberal Democrat group on the council. My question follows on from the previous one, actually. I think Liz has possibly partially answered it. One of the images that I have from earlier on in the pandemic is the Director General of the World Health Organization going on TV and saying that the only way to deal with this virus is to hunt it down and test again. So I think what I wanted to urge, can we push really hard, to have some sort of walk-in facility in Peterborough, so that it makes it really easy for people to get a test. And just one additional point on that, given the fact that a significant number of people in Peterborough don't have access to a private car, so can we bear that in mind, and can we ensure that that if we do get one of these testing facilities, that it's located fairly somewhere in central Peterborough?
Okay, I think you probably did answer that, Liz. Did you want to add anything to that?
Just to say that we would be hoping to locate the local testing centre where the mobile testing unit currently sits at Gladstone, so in central Peterborough.
Thank you, Liz. MP Vara.
Thank you very much, John. Shailesh Vara, Member of Parliament for North West Cambridgeshire, which covers a substantial part of the southern part of Peterborough and a whole lot of the northern part of Huntingdonshire. Could I start off, John, by simply saying a massive thank you to all of you who have been involved in trying to deal with this pandemic locally, from you, John, at the council, Gillian, to the health authorities, to the police, to the education people, a whole lot of people who have been involved, and with huge success. And that includes also all the volunteers who have played such an important role in making sure that we can keep this deadly virus in check. So a big thank you to all of you. The question that I have is, when we were at the time of having a huge amount of infection, the infection rate was huge in certain areas. Because this was new and you were dealing with it first time round, did you manage to detect any particular themes as to its extension from wherever it started? And the reason I say that is that if we were to find ourselves in the position that we're in difficulty again and infection rates rise, then would we have learned the lesson as to how it was spreading before, so that we can deal with it more efficiently this time around and much more quickly than last time around, when it was just really learning from start?
Emmeline, would you like to answer that, please?
Yes, we review the data on a daily basis in a surveillance group, and we look at where they are, if there are any high-risk settings, so workplaces, other settings, healthcare settings, but we also look at the high-risk groups. So a lot of the work that's gone in over the last couple of months has been targeting where we've seen transmission. So Adrian mentioned the work on car sharing and that side of things, and that's because when we'd had outbreaks, we learnt that's where the transmission was likely to have happened. So as we've gone through, we've been learning all the time as to where we're seeing aspects of transmission and then how we can target prevention to that. So it's a combination of us looking at the data, but also from every sort of outbreak and workplace and care home and setting that we go to, we learn where those likely transmissions are. But it refreshes and it changes. So, you know, what was happening in the last bit of June is not necessarily what's exactly happening now. And so we keep on having to reflect on that data. And that's where I came across with that targeted approach. We look the whole time to see if things are changing and if there are new groups that are getting the virus and that we need to change our prevention messages and target further. So yeah, it's a continually learning process.
Thank you.
That reassure you, Charlotte?
It does indeed, and I think it's. I repeat what I said earlier on. It's a tribute to the local community, and it's particularly encouraging to see that you're monitoring everything every day. And I suppose the thing to watch out for is if there's anything that is different on a particular day that hasn't occurred before, then that should sort of put up an amber sign to try and get more attention there. But otherwise, I mean, we all hope this won't happen again, but clearly if it does, and we have high infection rates locally, we want to be able to deal with them promptly and swiftly.
And please, if you see anything that you think we can do, same with everybody, you know, please let us know if you don't get an opportunity to put forward tonight. Bernadetta, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Holditch. My name is Benedetta Omondi. I'm the chair of Peterborough Racial Equality Council and also the chairperson of Black History Month Committee. During the start of the pandemic, I would like to say that the two organizations have really worked hard with the Black community, especially during the protest, kind of to also educate other people on ways to, you know, act during the pandemic. And I'm so glad that Peterborough City Council and Public Health were ready to help, and with kind of an you know, meetings that were just coming up, they were ready to help the Black community and also to work with us to continue talking to the Black community on how to kind of comply with the government guidance. Another thing I wanted to say was Black community, Black History Month and the Peterborough Racial Equality has really worked hard also with the churches to continue to talk about the continuous change in the government guidance so that the people that go to church and other people to understand what it means during this time. And I would really say that although it's a national decision about getting rid of the testing, mobile testing, it did help during that time because most of the people, because they don't have the know-how or digital know-how to could be booked and were having problems to make phone calls, they don't have mobile phones or they don't have phones, they were able just to walk in and get tested and being helped after that to kind of log into it later to get the number. So that did help, but you've said there's a new way that we might have somewhere else to do the testing that might help them. And I would also just like to say that it's good for Peterborough to continue working in partnership with the authority and other organizations, because this has really helped us to kind of curb the pandemic. So thank you very much.
Okay, and if you could see anything in the future that we could do differently, please let us know.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one's Dr. Moda.
Hello, hi, I'm Dr. Neil Moder. I'm a GP from Thistlemore Medical Centre in New England, as well as having roles in the system, I guess, representing health. And I guess for me, one of the key things is this is a marathon, not a sprint. So we've all got to keep going. So, you know, whether you're a leader, whether you're a volunteer, whether you're in the community sector, we need to keep kind of our eye on the ball on this. And definitely, you know, I've been really happy with the council's approach to this. I think, you know, for me as a doctor, I think it's kind of keeping those messages going with patients. So, you know, if you've got a cough, go and get tested. If you've got a fever, get tested, etc. And I think we you know, it's been really good to see Liz so much in the media, kind of, you know, putting out those messages to people as well. What I've been really proud of is the different flavour to the Peterborough approach. So, you know, we have a different population in Peterborough, a beautiful but different population, and a lot of the solutions have been focused on kind of being respectful and thinking through how we can approach that. So I know Liz has mentioned it and Emmeline has mentioned it, but we're really excited about working with the council on this mobile testing walk-in thing, and we're thinking about, you know, how do we communicate in different languages? How do we as GPs maybe have more involvement so we can book people in? We're looking for all of these things, which will hopefully help the population going. And definitely, you know, I've been in this local health system for about 12 years now, and this time, although it's a massive challenge, I'm just very happy with how people's approach have been. You know, money has not been in people's mind. It's all been about kind of caring for the population and doing as much as we can. And so just thank you to all the leaders on the call as well. And we're still very, very happy to help with any of that media messaging or innovative solutions by working closely with you all.
Thank you, Doctor. Our next one is Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Julie Howell. I'm the leader of the Green Group on the City Council and also a ward councillor for Autumn Waterville Ward. There's 3 points I wanted to raise, and they're all following on from what Adrian said in his presentation. The first one, please, is about visible patrols. And it was just really a plea that these visible patrols could also be present in some of the communities where COVID hasn't spiked particularly, south of the river and in Orton in particular. We may have done a good job of keeping the infection rates under control, but there is an undercurrent of fear and lack of information about the virus and about what you're supposed to do and following the rules. And I just know that if we saw more police and more council officers out on the streets, it would give people reassurance. And I think that might help us prevent a spike in the future, because just because we're doing well now, unfortunately, doesn't mean that we'll continue to do so. My next question is about leaflets through doors. Again, I find there is nothing more effective than a clearly worded, reassuring, informative leaflet through our residents' doors. And we've had that earlier on in reference to the hub earlier on in all of this. But I feel it would be useful again. I know it's a question of resources, all of these things are, but I think that would be money and time well spent. And my third thing was just because Adrian mentioned it about dog walking, just to say that what we've noticed locally is because people have been shielded in the past and other people have been walking their dogs, those people have not been as good at picking up after their dogs as their owners would be, and that presents us with another health problem. And of course we have to remember that although we focus on COVID, there are other threats to public health within our community. So I would just ask Adrian to please bear that in mind and make sure whoever's dog walking for us does pick up after the dogs. Many thanks.
Adrian, it's a community question. Do you want to answer that?
Thank you very much. Yes, thanks, John. Thank you, Julie, very much as well. All very, very valid points. You know, the first point around visible patrols elsewhere in the city is really important. And like with any form of preventative work, it is about getting in before the problem is really embedded. We have obviously finite resource, and so that resource must be targeted where the evidence suggests, but actually, you know, this is an effort for the whole of the city, and therefore the whole of the city must see the benefit. So we will be continuing to work up the patrol plans and grow the resource capacity such that we can make sure there is coverage in communities where we see future potential risk. so where people are likely to gather and where the virus may spread. So thank you very much for that, and we'll clearly keep our elected members very well briefed. You're absolutely right. The leaflets through the doors example was the hub launch, and that was a very successful campaign actually, and it led to a huge increase in people's knowledge and therefore business coming through the hub, and I think that's an excellent idea. This is a situation where whilst we've got to be careful about the resource implications, there are some things you just need to do, and I think that's one of them. So we will absolutely pick that up, and we have communications department colleagues on the call today. I can see her nodding, so that's good. And finally, yeah, thank you. I mean, I hadn't even thought about the consequences of other people that perhaps aren't used to keeping a dog, walking a dog. And, you know, as a dog owner myself, I know how important it is that my pets are looked after, but I also want to be a really good citizen. And there's no reason why anybody else should feel any differently. So thank you, we'll pick that up too. And thanks for the advice and wisdom on that, much appreciated.
Keith Markham.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Keith Markham. My interest today is I'm here on behalf of the Polish community. That may seem slightly strange given my cut glass British accent and appearance and surname. But for thank you very much. I've been married to a Pole for 18 years now and had the pleasure of learning this, how shall I put it, language. And for the last 4.5 years, I've been a trustee and indeed secretary to the Peterborough Polish School, which is the largest Polish Saturday school in the country outside of London. And we just started up our operations again, subject to a 14-page risk assessment agreed with St John Fisher, where we meet and so on and so on. So that's kind of my interest. When all of this kicked off, our main issue was obviously to make sure the school continued on Zoom. We managed to get everything onto Zoom almost immediately, carried on until the end of the school year. And then Jawad, who I've been liaising with for a few years now, suggested to me I might like to do a bit more, or we might like to do a bit more by having a grant from the Cambridgeshire Coronavirus Fund. So we had that £5,000. We're in the middle of trying to spend it. I have to say that Polish people are very reluctant to accept charity, though. And some of you may have experienced that as well. We've had major issues with trying to give that money away. We're in the process of buying clothes. We're in the process of preparing food parcels and so on. The message is getting out there slowly, but there is an issue to get with that. Of course, all of us are aware that yesterday a fairly serious announcement was made in respect of travel to Poland, which I think is going to have a big impact on us in this city. I have no doubt that hundreds, if not thousands of Poles in this city and surrounding area are booked to go to Poland at October half term. And this is not quite the same as a Brit going for some cheap sunshine in Tenerife. This is a family trip. And in particular, this is a very significant event in the Polish calendar up to the 1st of November when it's All Saints Day. That's a national holiday in Poland, and everybody, millions of people move around and visit graves. And the families go in advance, they go and clean those graves. It's very, very significant. So my gut instinct is the vast majority will still go. They're going to come back. There's then 14 days quarantine. Now, I think there are two issues on that. One is in the employment sector, because anecdotally, I know from polls in the summer, a number had a lot of issues with employers saying, we won't give you paid quarantine, even though they'd booked their trip in advance in good faith prior to any restriction. So I think we're going to see issues with that. And certainly, if we can get that message out there, I know perhaps no legal obligation, but certainly a moral obligation to encourage employers to pay that where we've got somebody who booked it in good faith, because most of them have booked it in advance. They book it afterwards, perhaps that's another story, but in advance, that's certainly an issue. And I suspect that many of those people won't be able to get hold of the £500 that Adrian was talking about, I suspect. So there's an issue with regard to that, certainly. Another issue, of course, is with regard to schooling. I think I saw John Lewis somewhere around. He's disappeared off my screen, but I know he's on the call. Again, I don't know the sheer numbers of students who will be affected by this, but I suspect other Central and Eastern European countries' students may also be affected, where they'll have to come back and quarantine for 2 weeks and they'll be out of school. Again, is there a way through the schools to just pass the message out? It's okay to quarantine. This is what we'll do to help you. Again, that's just something to think about with regard to that. And the final thing, and then I'll be quiet. In terms of the public health messaging, one of the things that we've been doing in the school is one of my colleagues has been translating those messages that we've had. We have then produced the videos, we've disseminated it through our school Facebook and website and so on. If I could make one gentle plea, and I have a legal background, so I'm probably not the best person to talk about being short and concise and to the point, but I do think that sometimes we could probably make those messages slightly shorter. even if it's just half a dozen bullet points. I have a tendency to put all the background in. I just think we could program slightly shorter. It's easier to translate, easier to do the videos, but we want to help. We're here. Come to us. You know, we're trying our best on top of the school and everything else, but we will do what we can. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak, and I'll turn back to you, Councillor Holditch. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Keith. That's very useful. That's the sort of thing we need to understand the differences of what way people celebrate and so on. So I think that's very helpful, and I'm sure Liz will pick that up at the end on when she sums it up. Thank you for that. I think I've got Mr. Abdul Khaleed now. Are you on? You're still on mute, Abdul.
Sorry, I've just
got you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, John. Good afternoon, everybody else. Abdul Khaleed, Chairman of Fazana Medina Mosque and the Chairman of George Mosque Council. Thank you for organizing this conference. First, I'd like to thank Adrian, who already appreciated the work which I, along with my colleagues on George Mosque Council, have done. As you know, there are well over 20,000 Muslims in Peterborough, and it was very, very difficult time for us to closing down the mosques for nearly 3-4 months. Most of the people are very religious minded, and it was very, very difficult thing to do that one. But since we opened, we have set up strict guidelines, instructed by the government, city council, health people, others. And I'm pleased to say that all the mosques are following those strict guidelines. People like Gillian Beasley, Adrian Chapman, and various other officers, including a member of parliament, have visited that one. They were absolutely delighted what we have done. If we even had people from the cabinet office, they also came and they were also delighted what action we have taken. And we are following the strict guideline. And I'm pleased to say that all these 4 mosques are open now for the worship. Apart from one mosque, they are still not, they haven't decided to open completely, but all the 4 mosques are following the complete guidelines and following all the instruction which been given to them. It was very, very difficult time, but I'm pleased to say that almost all people are following all the guidelines. So that's great for us as well. In addition to that, we're not only following the guideline, we also, during this lockdown period, most of the Muslim organizations
I think you're back, Abdul.
Yes, I'm back now, yeah. Most of the Muslim organizations, the takeaways, the restaurants, all these are been providing not only cooked meal, but also other food to all these homeless people and all these people who are under various kind of restriction. So that's also been doing, and nearly 100+ meals been delivered each night. And that's a great thing. And that's a lesson for the Islamic way of how we charities work and how to have other people. And that's also we've been doing on these things. In addition to that, not only we have these strict guidelines, one of the advantages which the mosque have is that we make these constant announcement on Fridays when there are well over in each mosque 700-800 people, and again reminding people all the guidelines they got to follow it. Matter of fact, we made an announcement other today, and also yesterday, last Friday, we made the same announcement about how the householders, they should not mix up more than these 6 people, whatever it is. How to avoid bereavement, not getting too many people together, and how to, again, on the wedding and all these things, So there is a constant reminder by the mosque to all the worshippers that they should follow these guidelines. And that's one of the reasons, as far as I'm aware, not a single case has been reported from the first 5 mosques of coronavirus, And that's a great thing itself, One of the things which we constantly hear, that there is central area, there is a high percentage of people who are affected that one. I think that is a concern to us because the 3 mosques are in the central area, and we are concerned about that one. And when we look on the facts and figure, that is not the case. The reality is that if you go into Lincoln Road and various other areas, you can see how the people are behaving on the shops and the various takeaways, various other places. And I think that is something which the council and the police need to take a strict action to stop these people are just gathering around. and 6, 7, 8, and 9 at a one time, just sitting around talking together, all these things. And that is a concern. We don't want to get blamed for that one, but that is something which I suggest the council and the police need to take a strict action to stop this thing happening there and avoid the spread of this virus.
Tim Alban-Jones, please.
Thank you, John. I'm Tim Alban-Jones. I'm the Vice Dean at Peterborough Cathedral and also speaking on behalf of the Diocese of Peterborough. I'm very pleased to be speaking directly after my friend Mr. Chowdhury because we work together as faith leaders within the city, and it's very good that we're able to meet and support what the City Council is doing. We are so pleased and so thankful for the leadership that we have been given, for all that is being done and has been done to stamp on this dreadful pandemic here in this city. Many of our faith groups we're only too pleased to get the messages out. So if there's anything we can do to help in spreading these messages, then we're pleased to do so, just as Mr. Chowdhury has said. He mentioned the 4 mosques that are good to go, that are safe for COVID and COVID secure, and many of our churches fall into that category. I would put a plea in, if possible, that if measures, the lockdown measures need to be increased, please could you consider leaving the churches and the other places of worship open, because I think they're very good for the health and well-being, not just of those who attend them, but also for our whole community. To have these places of worship being kept open, I think is very important for us. But thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you for that, Tim. Got Rajni Reddy next.
Yeah, good evening.
Hello.
Hello, yes, can you hear me now? Good evening, everybody. I'm Rajni Reddy from Bharat Hindu Samaj, Peterborough. We started preparations for COVID quite early because our festival season started in March. That is, we had Holi at the 10th of March. And then due to the exponential rise in infection, we decided to close our temple and community center from 7th of March for 2 weeks, because we felt that keeping our members safe was more important than risking upsetting them. So we did that early, and also we started a COVID support group.
I'm not focusing here.
The needs. Do you want your phone? And also we started a COVID fund and got donations so that we could supply food to the needy and to the NHS hospitals in Peterborough and Stamford. So right now we are pulled together, and because we are emphasizing the fact that the origin of COVID can be anywhere, but it's going to have a domino effect on the whole of Peterborough. So that has been understood by all our members, and they are cooperating fully. And the thing I need to tell this group of people is there's a rise in homeless people around supermarkets. I think that needs urgent attention now.
Thank you very much. How are you handling your celebration of light this year?
Oh no, we were going to have a virtual celebration, like have a big screen on Cathedral Square and record performances. But again, due to the exponential rise again and the surge, we put it off to next year. Next year, we'll have a live performance again.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Paul Bristow, MP.
Thank you, John. Again, I'm slightly stylish. I just want to say thank you to everyone for such a job well done, from the police, the local authority, and everyone who's been involved in this effort. But most of all, the communities. Mr. Chowdhury was right. I went to the mosque and I've been around various other institutions and saw such excellent work by everybody. And indeed, I've been to the churches as well. My question is this. this has been a phenomenal effort in Peterborough. We've got very similar demographics, very similar in terms of dense housing, intergenerational housing, and a big city, like many other places that have gone into full lockdown. But we haven't. And testing aside, and I know there are issues with that all over the country, our numbers have remained flat and now recently gone down. This is a remarkable achievement for Peterborough, and I feel very proud to be the MP for Peterborough. But is there a mechanism by which we can show what we've done in Peterborough and share that best practice with others, so other areas can learn from what we've done? And ultimately, I'm not saying we've got all the answers. Is there any way we can learn from best practice from other areas?
Paul, have we lost you? Are you still there?
I'm still here, John. Yeah. Did you get that question?
Yeah, we did get the question. I'm going to ask the Chief Executive to answer that.
Paul, thank you very much for that question. And I think one of the things that we've learned through COVID is the generosity of learning across institution organisations, not just within Peterborough, but actually across the whole country. And actually, during the time we had the Cabinet Office here and were regarded actually as best practice for some of the things we were doing, we were able to share that learning with other areas, and the Cabinet Office also shared learning where they'd been with us. And so I would say that that's been one of the greatest features for us is we've learned something from Bedford Borough because we did some peer work with them, but likewise they've learned from us. We've learned from other areas and they've learned from us in terms of some of the community work, because we've showcased that here today. That's been fantastic. So that generosity, I'm sure will continue. Nobody's above learning, but also nobody's above sharing, and long may that continue, because that stood us in good stead, and I'm sure the learning we've given other places have stood them in good stead too. And as I say, long may that continue, and I'm sure it will do.
Happy with that, Paul?
I'm very happy, very happy. As Julian says, we're not above learning, but if we can help other parts of the country share in our success, that's got to be positive.
Absolutely. Councillor Amjad Iqbal. Amjad.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone for organising and attending this conference, a very useful conference where we've gathered to gain some insight about the COVID-19 and also to share our views on how to deal with this comeback pandemic. Adrian has praised the community leaders and the community organisations for supporting the COVID-19 pandemic. My question to him, are the community happy with the council, the way that they're delivering the support for them? That's one question to you. Jodhpur Muqaddas has spoken about Central Ward, saying that there's been a rise of COVID-19 in this area. Nothing has been suggested like that. However, what I am going to say to this conference today is that the shopping centres, the businesses are located within the central area. So we'll have more sort of interaction, a lot of people coming to the Central Ward area. Taking that into account, I will request that more resources are dedicated to the Central Ward because of the nature of the ward, especially police patrolling, to show that people behave and abide by the rules. Thank you.
Adrian, would you like to tackle that one?
So yeah, I'll happily respond to the first question. Maybe Liz can pick up the second, or Emmeline. It's perhaps not for me to say whether or not our communities are happy with the council, but certainly there are plenty of indications that suggest that what we're doing is meeting the needs of our population. I think one of the things that, thank you, Moez. One of the things that we've been able to do is to turn our hand, frankly, at very pace to emerging needs of all of our residents. So thousands of residents were helped during the first wave, many hundreds still continue to receive help. That's in the form of food and essential supplies, help with household chores, anything that again helps people stay safe and away from harm. And I think another indicator for me is the amazing response which has been sustained from the community champions. I don't want to labour the point which I've already made, which is that our community champion network has stood up right at the start and was very, very active. But to this day, it remains active. And I absolutely know, and I don't feel I need to check this with any of the individuals, that if I ask them now to meet with me at very short notice and turn their hand to support a piece of action, they would do so. And I think that's something about Peterborough, but it's also something about the relationship that we've formed. And it's built on years, isn't it, of effort. This isn't something we've turned on at the start of a global pandemic. That would be fake and meaningless. Actually, the work that we've done as a group of partners in this city for a decade or more is really now what's coming out to play in real time to our benefit. So years of effort, years of lots of collaboration, lots of listening. And I like to think that we are meeting the need. As John says, though, and as Paul has said, we are never at a point where we stop learning. And if anybody today has been prompted to think differently or to be inclined to suggest something that they think we can do differently, better, or stop doing, we are really, really open to hearing that. And I promise you, we will listen and we will do our very best to adapt. So I hope that's reassuring. And maybe Liz or Emily could pick up on the second.
No, I think that answers the question well. I think, Adrian. So can I go to, you pick that up in your summing up, Liz, if you would, please?
Yes,
Okay.
that's fine.
Andrew Riddington.
Yeah, hi, thank you, John. Yeah, I've joined the meeting today on behalf of the Lord Lieutenant. Mrs. Spence is, like everybody, very concerned about this COVID-19 threat and what is being done, especially in Peterborough. I've heard a lot of about some really extremely well coordinated work and some excellent work also going on in the communities today. And I'm really delighted to hear that this is set to be improved again next week. I'm going to report back to her this evening on what I found today. Thank you very much. Please keep up the good work.
John, you're on mute. We didn't hear any of that.
That's how most people like it, you know. Iveta.
Yeah, hello everyone. And I'm sending, can you hear me? And I'm sending, yeah, good. I'm sending the special hello to Adrian. I'm still waiting for his record for Latvian community celebration. That is a homework for you on weekend. But anyway, for the COVID-19, as Adrian mentioned on his introduction about what's been done, and about 6 weeks project which been run by Parka and Glatka. I was the one who took part on that 6 weeks project, and I wanted to give a real feedback, what's happened and how happened. And group of them people from different communities, from the mainly grassroots communities, from different language skills. We done the job which been asked from the city council, and as an extra we decide in the team to go for the outreach to reach people on the Lincoln Road, and the team decide to give out the masks and remind them that masks needs to be wear in the shops. As you all know the Lincoln Road has million shops, small shops, and when we start to go out every Wednesday, the people didn't respect us, but every Wednesday we still came out and give out the masks, and people recognize us and they start wearing masks. We spoke with the shop holders and ask them to use the masks or remind people use the masks. And what is on the end, the project is finished, and by yesterday I went to the shop to Lincoln Road, not by the project but by myself to buy food, and I was in a queue, and someone walked in the shop, and the lady who is a cashier or whatever, she said to the person, can you please wear a mask before to come to the shop? And I said, wow, yes, we did great job. We achieved the what we wanted, and that's what I want to share. And I want to say thanks to council to come to the grassroots communities. We've been able to speak with people even with no language. Thank you.
Benedetta, you have spoken before. Is it something new?
Yes, something new, but you just made me, I'm almost forgetting what I wanted to say. I just wanted to say that what Edwin said about the communities, whether we are happy with what Peterborough City Council has done or the authority, I believe that the authority has really supported the community, and that short notice, as I had said earlier on, the short notice, you make a phone call, because we kind of have shared our phone calls to various officials that we might need to just talk to when there's an emergency. And I think that coordination.
No, just call police.
I think that coordinating with the authorities that way has made us work really quickly, and even with the police, we have numbers that we can call. So we're really happy the way that bridge is, and it's a fast one, and it helps the community when you have a free link and you're not fearful to contact anybody. So I think the group has done very well to liaise with the community, and also to say most organizations do take Black History Month to be in October, although we do say Black History Month is every day. So Black History Month this year we cancelled. It was supposed to happen 27th.
Yeah, definitely.
The big event was cancelled, but we're going to have a small kind of flag raising next week. I won't really say much about it because I don't want many people to come there, but yeah, it will be happening sometimes next week. And we are also supporting the any organization that is doing Black History Month this month. Like already I've been called with the hospital to say certain to give like a guest speaker, but we're doing it virtual, and also to promote Hate Crime Week, because as Black History Month, we've always supported the police by doing telling people where to report hate crime, and also modern day slavery. Thank you. Sorry to come back again.
Sorry, I interrupted you in the middle as well. Sorry about that. I've got the council's health spokesman and Councillor Wayne Fitzgerald, and then I'm going to ask Liz if she will sum up, because we've gone well over our 30 minutes, but it's been very, very well worthwhile. So, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, John. I've been sitting here just listening, taking it all in, and I too appreciate all the good work that's going on within the communities. And I think Liz will echo what I'm going to say. So hopefully, Liz, I won't steal any of your thunder, that we've been very hard at work in terms of public health messaging about where we are today, which is good news that we've come off the watch list last week. There is some issues around testing in terms of if we had the capacity and the testing capability that we should have right now, that position might change, because it does fluctuate, in that we might find more cases of the virus in the city. But the most important thing is not to be complacent and to remain vigilant about where we are in reality, and washing the hands, covering the face, and making the space is a very important message that everybody in the communities can reinforce and get across to people that, you know, this thing has not gone away. And it is spreading still within households particularly, and amongst younger people, which has been evidenced recently nationally. And it's the same in Peterborough. So while today we are in a good position, that could change next week. So the gathering of large communities or family groups should be avoided at all costs. Households should not mix or mingle, particularly in those communities where there is a tendency to have larger households or families, either A, living together, or B, in close proximity. You should try and stay apart. So from a community point of view, everybody's been doing a great job and will continue to reinforce those, but it is very much down to many of you on this call today to help do that. And I hope I've said all the right things, Liz, but I won't say any more, which is unusual for me, and I'll shut up.
Is that a promise, Wayne? Liz, would you like to sum up, please?
Okay, yes, and thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald, and I do absolutely echo what you say. We are at a critical point in terms of our, as some people have put it, our fight against the virus. We have seen many areas that are similar to Peterborough have very rapid and sudden increase in cases. And we've seen that going up first in the 18 to 30 age group, where people don't tend to become seriously ill, but certainly up in the northern part of the country, we're now seeing that spreading to more vulnerable people, and we're seeing the hospital admissions going up as well. So we are kind of in a position where it could escalate here. In the way that it has in other places, but you just need to listen to all the excellent work that has been going on in Peterborough over the past months to understand why we haven't seen that escalation. I have to say that many of us at the council have been saying that we've been doing this for a long time. We know that some of our staff are starting to feel quite tired. And we've been hearing that back from the community as well. So what we absolutely need to do is to make sure that we keep the energy and we keep the commitment to keeping our population safe. And it's about keeping people safe and healthy. Clearly that's my role as Director of Public Health. But by doing that and by keeping our rates down, we also keep our economy open and keep that longer term health, because our businesses can stay open and people can stay in jobs, and we can continue to for people to earn their money, and we can keep our kids in education. So all those things tie up together. What I would say is that today's certainly given me more energy, and one of the things that's given me more energy is hearing us all thank each other. So this is Peterborough pulling together. I've heard people in the council thanking communities and community leaders for what you've done, thanking our mosque leaders for the hard work that's gone in, and thanking our wider faith communities. I've heard our communities thanking the council. I've heard us thanking the health service and the NHS, but also the NHS thanking communities and others for what we're doing and the messages that we're putting out. And I've heard I've heard Adrian thanking the police for the way that they are engaging and the way that we are going to work together and have that presence out there. So what I'm hearing from everyone on this call is that we are working together as Peterborough, and it's by working together as Peterborough and the communities in Peterborough that we've had the success that we've had so far. And it's by working together that we will keep that energy going, and that we will continue to reduce the spread of coronavirus in our communities and keep ourselves safe. So that is so important. I've also heard about, I love the phrase, and I know not everyone does, but I love the phrase, doing the boring stuff well. And people do get a bit tired of the social distancing messages, of the 2 meters message, of the wearing the face covering, of the washing their hands. But what I've heard right round the call today is so many community leaders who are committed to just keeping those messages going with our residents and our communities, because and getting a test, of course, and self-isolating, that's what will make the difference. And it's keeping those messages fresh and new, and keeping those messages going with our communities. That is what will make the difference. It's about what we'll all do. And it's been fantastic to hear the different ways in which particularly our community leaders are getting the message across, and also some of the support that you want from us. So it might be about leaflets work for many people, and the reflection on the success of the leaflets for the shielding. But also it's about, can we make our messages simpler for some of those translated video blogs? So those very practical points that have been coming back to us from today are going to inform our communication strategy. We have an excellent comms team, Christine Birchall and Amanda Rose, I hope are on the call, and we are really listening to what you're saying. So we're listening today, but we'll also listen as you come back to us outside this meeting to make sure that we're always adapting and supporting that messaging. And then we've got the practical learning from our Polish community representative about what might be happening in October. That sort of information is absolutely what we need, so that we can take the data that Emmeline's getting, that she talked about at the beginning, but also all the intelligence that you can give us about what's happening in the community. And then the services, the police, the health service, the council, we can all adapt what we do so that we can support you in the best way possible to lead in your communities. And I think that message has come across really strongly as well. There's some specific messages. I've heard about the importance of testing, so we've really pushed on that, and I'm pleased that we've pushed on the right thing, which is getting the walk-in testing back. So we will absolutely keep you posted on that. And as I say, we're hoping to open up at Gladstone in mid-October with the local testing centre, but also our GPs are helping, and our hub are helping before that. So we will absolutely keep you in touch with testing and everything that's going on there, because it is important. And I've also heard about, we've got to engage, we've got to explain, but we also sometimes need to enforce. And we've had some very specific messages back from you about where we may need to be targeting some of that enforcement. We've heard from a number of you around how and where we need to do that. So, and I know that Andy Jip is here, and we've had some really supportive conversations with our police colleagues about this. So really looking forward to that. And to what there's work we've been doing together already, but really looking forward to that operation going forwards. And that message has been heard strongly. And again, we're listening to what you say and reacting to what the community needs, which is what we absolutely have to do going forward. So that's just touching on a few of the inputs that we've had. We've had fantastic feedback from so many people on this meeting. I know that Mary Lean, for one, and some others are busy taking notes of all the detail that's been said. And we can also look at the YouTube video so we can get all the richness of this meeting. We will be taking that, we will be using it, and we will be making sure that we incorporate all of it into our plans. But we'd like you to carry on feeding back to us outside this meeting as well. So that we can keep going in this joint effort, and in 6 months' time we can be coming back and saying Peterborough has carried on working together. We can still say thank you to each other. We're still working as a Peterborough community across all the communities that we have, and we can still be showing you the statistics that show that that work we are doing together, it has been effective up till now. I would like in 6 months' time to be able to say, yes, that has still been effective, and to be able to show you that benefit that we've had to people's lives. So you can tell I'm quite passionate about this, and I think we all are. So that's my summing up.
Thank you, Liz. I think it's been a great evening. You can see that Peterborough is united. We've not said anything about the health workers, and I think you know, without them we wouldn't be able to carry on the work that we're doing, and they've done a tremendous job, not just in the hospitals but in working with us across the piece. So I think there's some positives that have come out of this, Boris. You know, it's brought the communities closer together. We've worked very hard over the years to bring the communities together, but this has made us really work together, and I think that stands us in good stead for the future. So can I thank all those of you that have contributed this evening, and those that are listening. I hope you found it useful, and if you've still got anything you'd like to get across to us, do email us or ring Liz or Gillian or myself, and we'd be happy to take on your ideas. So thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.